Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and expectations for the Silent Hill remake from published developer Bloober team were pretty much rock bottom. Their previous attempt at making a homegrown Silent Hill style experience was the medium, and it wasn't that good. How are the people that made that going to be able to make a new version of one of the most revered survival horror experiences of all time? How? Well, I don't know if you recall, but your old pal Falcon actually called it on that one. Just like with the Nintendo Switch, there were tons of naysayers, and I said, call me crazy. But Bloober team either isn't capable of making a good game, or the Silent Hill 2 remake is going to be great, because it is the time that they have to do great, because everybody is going to be watching them on this one. And if it isn't great, that's all anybody's going to talk about for a long time. But if it is great, they go from being the guys that made the medium to the guys that made the Silent Hill 2 remake. And that'll get them a lot of goodwill if they do it right. And they did. Go back, find a video where I said that. It probably wasn't those exact words, but it was that exact logic. Anyway, even die-in-the-wool haters had to admit that the Silent Hill 2 remake was absolutely excellent. It was not only reverent to the original, it got the story right, it got the environmental design right. It was actually incredible in that respect. The combat was well done, if a little too frequent for certain fans, but as far as I'm concerned, that's a really minor squibble. The combat's a lot better than the original game, that's for sure, and even though maybe it happened more, it was more enjoyable. Bloober really stepped up with Silent Hill 2, and less than a year later, they're following that game up with their own original survival horror project called Cronos: The New Dawn. Yes, Silent Hill 2 was great, but it had Konami behind it, and that means not only money, but a clear template to follow. They were building on top of one of the best survival horror games ever, so how are they going to do with something that's completely theirs? So right from the start, Cronos distinguishes itself from their previous work with a strange, almost intentionally alienating premise. It throws you into a bizarre world with zero exposition, and that feeling of entering the unknown really does a good job of establishing the game's relentlessly oppressive atmosphere. The world's a wasteland. It's a dead place full of strange anomalies and twisted mutations, afflicted with something only known as the change. Right from the start of the game, your goals and even who you are is not completely clear. Your character, who is only known as the Traveler, wears a bulky H.R. Geiger-looking spacesuit, so it's hard to tell what you even are at first. Are you human? It's not clear. As you progress through the game, the story slowly builds, you learn more about the world and what happened in its last days. Your mission, for whatever reason, is to collect essence, which is achieved by exploring the wasteland, finding portals that take you back in time to just before the apocalypse happened, and extract the essence of key people connected to the outbreak so that their mind can join something called the Collective. Why you're doing this, what good it's doing, and how any of these elements connect to each other is what drives the intrigue of the plot, and I think that the story here is surprisingly well done. Most of what you're doing is usual survival horror stuff. You explore ruins, read notes, listen to audio logs, and a lot of what you learn is fairly traditional fall of civilization stuff. But I've said this in other videos, there's 7 types of stories. That's it. It's not the actual beats of the plot, it's how you do the plot, how you get to the destination. It's not what, it's how and why. That's a story. And the writing is pretty strong and paints a depressingly relatable picture of mankind's last days. If it was just a standard apocalyptic story, it wouldn't be half as interesting. The weird time traveler aspect and the mysterious organization you belong to, they do add a lot of mystery to the whole scenario, and the story is surprisingly engaging. It's the thing that kept me propelling forward. I cared. This is good. But the survival horror gameplay is also intriguing. What's interesting here is that Cronos is very dedicated to being a horror game. Full stop. You move slow, you die quick, and for most of the game, you're really resource-starved. And the game isn't always all that scary. I don't feel like there's any standout horror moments like the prison from the Silent Hill 2 remake, but the game manages to be consistently tense, far more tense than a lot of other horror games, simply because you're always on the back foot, and they do it well. Games like Resident Evil 4 try to keep you on your toes by limiting the amount of restorative items and ammo you collect, but this game's particularly stingy with supplies, so much so that I would say it's among the stingiest of any other game of this type. This is the only survival horror I've played in recent memory where I actually legitimately ran out of ammo during one of 2 encounters. Every shot really does count in Cronos: The New Dawn. It's a non-stop uphill battle, but weirdly, I also don't think the game is like stupidly difficult or punishing. It's just tougher than most other survival horror games that have come out recently. I'd say it's tougher than Dead Space, it's definitely tougher than the Silent Hill 2 remake, and there's no difficulty setting, so if you want to play it, you gotta be ready for some hardship. It's the point of the game. It's not quite as relentlessly difficult as it could be, which is good, because again, that lack of a difficulty setting thing, but it's not easy, and I think that's a good thing. A good survival horror game should make finding like a big cache of resources or like a new weapon feel like a big deal, and this game pulls that off in spades. When you can finally get enough energy to afford a big upgrade for your weapons, or you find an optional path that leads to a new weapon variant, it's really satisfying. Like, the game smartly adapts a lot of Resident Evil ideas, like having a currency you can spend, special suit upgrades called cores that you find hidden in the environment. They feel right out of in the best way, feel like they're out of Dead Space. It's a huge compliment. It is not a they're ripping off Dead Space comment. I am complimenting them hardcore. There's also a Resident Evil 2 remake style crafting system where you can use chemicals and metal scraps to make ammo and healing items, which is a godsend when you're completely out of pistol ammo or desperately need a healing item. This is the rare survival horror game where just straight up buying items in the store is pretty much necessary. It's an extremely tightly balanced game that might feel a little unfairly tuned at first, but once you get into the groove of things, it just all feels right. The difficulty forces you to engage with the game's systems in a way that a lot of other survival horror games don't. Like, it feels really integrated with itself. And that's, something we all want, or should want, in video games. There are a lot of ideas that are basically lifted from other survival horror games, but it has enough unique ideas to distinguish itself, like a charge mechanic. All the guns shoot like normal, but the damage you're going to do to the quote-unquote orphans is fairly minimal. If you want that bullet to actually hurt something, you have to charge it up, which takes a little bit to do, which leaves you vulnerable while aiming. Do you take the risk and try to charge a shot while the monster is bearing down, or do you waste a bullet with the weaker shot? That's the mental calculus the game forces you into all the time, and it's good that you have mental calculus during combat. It might sound like I am exerting some of the lowest possible standards, but also remember, we are in an age where developers literally flat out say game mechanics are not the focus anymore. I think it was the Shadow of the Colossus guy that said that. And to be fair, he's not saying the same thing that it immediately sounds like he's saying, but I know more than a few other people would say it the way that you think it sounds. This game deliberately tries not to be an action game. There is no dodge mechanic, there's no slowdown times, no psychic powers. The best you get is the ability to change these anomalies and sometimes cause explosives in the environment to reappear. That's one overpowered thing you get. It's the only overpowered thing you get, and you'll be relying on it because those explosives lying around are not optional. If you don't use them, you will run out of ammo. Along with that, if there are dead monster bodies around, the creatures will often try to merge with the corpse and become more powerful. Yeah, and letting too many monsters merge is a really bad idea because they do get more power. That's what happens when they merge. It's not just that they want to do it. That's what happens. And if you let too many of them do it, you will get overwhelmed. They're a lot tougher when they're merged. You can't even the odds with a flamethrower, which is sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card that can stun all the surrounding enemies for a while, as well as burn bodies and remove certain walls of biomass, which can sometimes open up optional passages and hidden caches. You also get proximity bombs, along with the usual assortment of weapons, which doesn't have the variety or depth of something like Resident Evil 4 or Dead Space, but there's a solid collection of weapons that all have their different strengths and weaknesses, and they are all actually fun to use. There are also anti-gravity segments that do feel right out of the original Dead Space, which do add some variety, though. The environmental design is just well done, and so is the flow of exploration. Even without a minimap, the larger, more interconnected environments still manage to be pretty natural, and I never really found myself getting lost. Even in the rare situation where I didn't know where to go, I could check the objective marker, and that would put me back on track. If there's one thing I found annoying about the exploration in the game, is that there's sometimes doors that require bolt cutters, which pretty much always means you have to backtrack to the safe house, get the bolt cutters out of storage, run back to the room that's locked, get the stuff, and then run back to the safe house and dump your bolt cutters and continue. It kind of breaks up the flow of exploration because you're never going to keep the bolt cutters in your inventory. They take up precious space that you can't waste, so these bolt cutter doors are just tedious. I mean, at least they're mostly close to the safe rooms, so the backtracking isn't terrible, but it does get old. Maybe if it didn't matter, like you could just ignore certain resources, but you can't. You really, really need everything in Cronos the New Dawn. If you think you don't, you're going to learn a lesson. So just ignoring these locked rooms it's not happening. One thing I do appreciate is the time travel aspect, which I assumed was just for story purposes, but it actually also really helps break up the exploration gameplay. By the time you start to get tired of the desolate, destroyed future, you end up going back in time to the early 80s, which is much more like your traditional survival horror locations. The future setting is so oppressively dark and grim. So seeing like a regular apartment block it's refreshing and kind of almost even exciting, even if there's plenty of meat hallways to slosh through in both timelines. You do need to get used to seeing meat walls. This game is lousy with them. They're here early and often and usually herald the appearance of monsters. I will say with how much of the fleshy goo nasty that you see everywhere, you'd think its creepiness would diminish over time, but they keep finding new ways to make these segments tense, even if not necessarily surprising. It works still. Puzzle design is pretty standard for the genre. It's kind of more Dead Space than Resident Evil, more functional than fanciful, but it's well done, and it does break things up between exploration. The enemy design is pretty solid. Again, there's more Dead Space inspirations pretty clear with the grotesque amalgamations of people you fight. There's a solid variety of enemies to keep you on your toes. It's not groundbreaking, but like it's good. Nothing's gonna leave you speechless or wondering what the heck you're looking at or how you're supposed to fight it. That's also true of the bosses as well. They're not bad, but they're not super memorable. That's probably the biggest issue with Cronos the New Dawn. It isn't as memorable as it could be. It's a great game all around. It's well designed. The story is legitimately interesting. The 80s inspired John Carpenter-esque synth soundtrack is great. Graphically, it's strong. It runs well, at least on PS5, which is where I played it. It's a good game, a great survival horror experience, and it's a rare modern game that doesn't descend into full-blown action by the end. There's a lot of things that you'll see that'll remind you of other stuff. Like I've mentioned a lot of Resident Evil and Dead Space and that type. That's all there. Your guy, like I said, weird H.R. Geiger suit looking guy, but also kind of looks like a BioShock guy. Looks like a diver suit in certain ways. And greedily, I wish it went a little further and got a little weirder, but it is a really consistently very good experience from start to end, and you have to respect that. It's just, it does everything it sets out to do, and it does it well. This is a very good and challenging game that horror aficionados will get a lot out of. I'm not sure that people who are definitely looking for something new and innovative are going to find it, but I kind of don't care. It does introduce new ideas. It doesn't necessarily go all the way with them. Again, I don't care. End of the day, it's not a particularly new and original dish, but it's an old favorite that is cooked very well, and they sprinkled it with Cajun. Those Cajun spices, they do a lot. Believe me, they do a lot. Will it blow you away? I feel like probably not, but it more than proves the Silent Hill 2 remake was not a fluke. It's really good. It's really worth checking out. These guys know what they're doing, and I'm super excited to see what they do with the now confirmed Silent Hill 1 remake and beyond. What do you think? Leave us a comment. Let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.
Hello, cat.